If you want to know specifics about your North Node, if you want to know about North Node through the houses or anything, any of the other topics that I've done, please check out the North Node playlist. This video, I want to specifically dive into your South Node placement to help enhance your North Node placement. So first of all, I'm just going to jump straight in. We want to understand this. If you are someone trying to really understand the North Node better and understand how to best utilize it, and I've heard these people talking about their North Node and how they've worked on it and how they feel fulfilled. How do I get there? We definitely want to make sure we understand what's coming from our South Node first. It is important for you to study your South Node, the house, all of those different components before you jump into understanding your North Node. And guess what? You might be going back and forth. There may be times in your life where you're like, you know what? I feel misaligned. Thinking through how to use your South Node strength, because your South Node is where you're coming from. It is where you are the most familiar with something, okay? Think about it. When you're driving from home to a new location, you're familiar with your hometown or city. But once you start heading outward, that is where sometimes there can be this unfamiliar territory. But if you've ever driven somewhere new and started to see places you never saw before and feel a connection to it even though you haven't been there, or you start to see new things that cause new sensations, that is what the South Node is. I mean, the North Node is, okay? Your South Node, I'm comfortable, this is where I'm coming from. The North is where you are going towards. So, and again, picture that in your head because I know this looks different. The reason this looks, so we want to think about this North Node, South Node axis as how can we use the South Node to improve the North Node, right? We're basically transferring energy into different ways, basically, right? So, for instance, you have a South Node in the first house. You have already this concept of who you are. You may have a high opinion of yourself. You may have a big personality. Again, this is all going to depend on the ascendant. It's going to depend on if there's any planets in the South Node or what else is in the chart, right? But you're already coming to this world with a sense of self. And you're already going to be a person who tries to do a lot of things on your own by yourself. But you may be a person that doesn't truly, so if we actually want to highlight this, you don't truly understand how to best be the best version of yourself until there's partnership, there's collaboration. It's admitting I can learn from other people. That does not take away from who you are. I get it. A lot of people don't want to be, codependent. They don't want to be reliant on someone else's strength. Totally get it. But if your North Node's in the 7th house, you're learning how to cooperate, collaborate, and have better unions with other people, right? And I don't think it just has to be romantic either. So, but your South Node is essential because here's where you're learning where you identify. The more you understand who you are and how you identify, you then can seek certain traits in the unions and partnerships that you have in the 7th house. So it's not about distancing yourself all the way from the South Node. It's about utilizing your South Node, right? And understanding like what on your own from your South Node or from that energy have you not accomplished yet. You can have people who have all these accolades, but they maybe feel more fulfilled once they actually get into a partnership that makes them more money, or they get into a marriage and they have a family, if that's what they find important. Again, each person's going to find something other, each person has different needs and wants out of life, but that's just an example of it, right? But you have to start from the South Node first. It's like, who am I? What do I represent? And then do the partnerships that I seek help balance me? Because if I have too much energy in my first house, if I'm too contingent on that South Node first house, I'm coming into this world thinking very much about myself. And that might be helpful in certain areas of my life, right? But I'm here to attain and understand what does it look like to then transfer that energy and then still be myself in these unions and these partnerships, okay? In these one-to-one circumstances that I find myself in, okay? So it's not about abandoning this, but learning to use it. Learning to look at your South Node a little bit more psychologically through how you may be, or what habits you're coming into this world with, what assumptions are we coming into this world with through our South Node, okay? Now we're gonna move on to the 2nd and the 8th, okay? So you're coming through your South Node, 2nd house, self-sufficient, you did it on your own, self-made person perhaps, had to work very hard in a past life, And you're used to that. Let me work, work, work. But here's what's happened. One, your work ethic is probably strong. And when your work ethic is strong, you can afford to take a few more risks. And what happens is when we're used to doing things on our own, we don't trust anyone, right? We don't trust it. Your North Node's in the 8th house. And if that's the case, you have to learn how to trust things that aren't tangible. The 8th house is a promise, it's a promise or it's a take of something. So a promise could be, we think of joint assets, inheritance. Hey, here's a will, or here's a contract. Because we're joined together, you now get this, right? But again, the 8th house is I'm getting from something. I'm obtaining. It's a power type of energy, right? And because it's also think of water, the 8th house has to transform. The 2nd house is used to things in front of its face. I work hard, I get this check. I work, I get this. I'm in control. I know what I'm getting. The 8th house is more contingent on others, okay? It is joining up, right? It is energy that's transmuted. So when we look at it that way, you have to understand how to add to what you have, but trust your instincts, which if you're coming from a South Node 2nd house, you're not used to doing that. And so the thing about the South Node in the 2nd house is use that energy, right? Because you're going to say like, this is what I have. But your North Node is like, make it meaningful, make it deeper. So you're always going to want to make sure you still have things or have your own, or you have the tools to be stable, but now you're here to grow in ways that sometimes are not just quantified by money, the check, the property directly in front of your face. The 8th house has to believe that who and what it's getting from is going to feed its need. Again, you can look at the 8th house in many different ways, but right now I'm just talking about it in general. But when we think of it that way, your North Node, you're here to multiply. You're here to let something transform. But when something transforms, it is not always going to be right in front of your eyes, right? So there's a difference there. Even if you think of people who are spiritual and into certain practices and rituals and things like that, the 2nd house would be a person who's more earth-based. It's way more practical. It is way more in your face. It is way more, using magic, using herbs, oils, things that are easy to obtain. The 8th house is we might get something that's harder to obtain if we're doing a ritual or spell. So again, I'm trying to give an example of what that would look like, that when you're working with 2nd to 8th house energy, in this order, you're taking what you have, you're seeing what you have, and allowing yourself to have a little bit more trust and faith in developing and joining up with something that has more power, that has more advantage. And that can be a scary thing for some people who are like, no, I'm used to doing it the hard way, right? But the 8th house is, remember, that's Pluto and Mars. If Pluto's like, if we can transform something, but if we can get it in a way that's very subtle, we can do that as well. So learning how to lean into that without this fear that it's something bad or it's something that is negative. Your North Node is not negative, right? It wants you to do this. It wants you to understand its power. But that is how you're working through those different houses, And sometimes when you don't feel very confident in some areas, you go back to that 2nd house. Let me build something up. Once I build it up, then what do? 8th house, right? So when we're confident in our South Node, we then got to go out and make it applicable to our North Node. South Node and North Node. Okay, in the 3rd and 9th house. So from your South Node, it's taking what you know and what you've learned, okay? If you have a 3rd house South Node, you are used to being deliverer of information, having the information, being able to be listened to about certain things. You have a really direct line to being communicative. You have the ability to learn very quickly, right? But your North Node's in the 9th house. And since your North Node's in the 9th house, you need to find a way to get that message through to a bigger audience in a way that helps people have faith and helps people believe. So in the past, like maybe you had to be very literal, very objective. Maybe that was your role. Maybe that was the family you were born into, wanted you to be that way. Maybe that was your job. Maybe that was simply the way things were where you were. And so now you're coming into this world having to find that 9th house energy. And that 9th house is only going to really be fully maximized by experience. Once you gain more experience, you'll get more confident in terms of your beliefs. And it will depend on where you choose to spread your impact. But you need to take what you know, what you've learned, 3rd house, and spread your impact, 9th house. Again, I can say this very clearly because this is my placement. And also, for example, I've probably said this in another video, but again, some people are new to my channel and may not have seen the other video. So sorry if I'm repeating something that you've already seen. But the South Node in Scorpio, right? So I have Pluto, Saturn, Scorpio, South Node. So I know a lot of complex things. I can think in very complex ways. I have the ability to do that. People who have that placement do as well. It's not like I'm the only one. But because of that South Node in the third house, I love to understand the ins and outs. But my ninth house North Node in Taurus requires me to simplify it to an audience. And that's what I do when I go on here and I teach astrology, is that I can know a lot of things, but I can't explain everything at the deepest level all the time. Because in order to help people understand what I'm saying, I have to know how to speak to the people. And Taurus is very good at being very direct, but also being very much authentic in how things come across. And that's how I hope I come across. That's what some people have said in comments, is that I know how to break it down in ways that people understand and instill in ways that are nuanced and meaningful, which is what I really want to do, right? But again, I couldn't do that without my third house, because it's my job to take all the things that I've learned and know enough to simplify to what do people need to hear, though. They don't need to hear every single thing that I know, right? They don't need to hear every single, piece of information. The people need to hear what they need to hear. And Taurus is good at simplifying the message. It's good at taking something and let's apply it. That's the person I am. I don't like to just tell people what to do and say, this is what this means. Now, how do we use it? How do we now use this in practice? Okay, so that's an example of but again, I noticed this because my third house is very important to me feeling confident enough to go into my North Node. I have to do the research, the digging to understand things and think about things constantly in order for me to feel confident enough to then express. Again, my chosen venue, of course, is obviously YouTube, social media, things like that, to spread my message about astrology and spirituality. But it requires me to first be in my third house zone. Then I transfer it over to the ninth house where I continue that, okay? Let's talk about the fourth house and the 10th house. So if you're coming from a fourth house South Node, you feel probably a lot of pressure to stick to the past, to stick to things that you know. And it helps you maybe make others around you very happy, okay? But it's important to evaluate, and I tell everybody with fourth house placements, I don't know if I put it in the fourth house video, when you have fourth house placements, you have to really analyze your fourth house and understand what you now believe, think, and feel as an adult. Because the fourth house can imprint a lot on us. And if it's not truly what we are, we as adults can find it hard to navigate some of the relationships to people in our lives, family, friends, partners, etc. So the point here is, like, if I work from my South Node and I know what matters to me, right? Or I know what's told matters to me. But I then need to take that same energy and think through, what do I want to be known as in the world? In my home, in my family, in my hometown, where I'm comfortable, right? People know me as this. And maybe I may always be known as this. But I have more power now. I have a duty beyond my fourth house to go be seen in ways that are not emotionally connected to me. Okay, this is you. I'm speaking as if I am you and you have this placement. Okay, so you're working through the South Node of really truly understanding what matters to you, who matters to you, what matters to you, right? But then you're also thinking through, okay, this is what matters here. What matters out there? Because if you try to blend too much, what happens is you get dissatisfied. You're in the fourth house zone and you're like, my parents want me to do this job. My parents want me to go to college for this. And you don't listen to yourself. What can happen is you then become one of those people, and there's nothing wrong with it. You're changing majors. You're changing careers. A lot of people change careers. It's pretty normal. Nothing wrong with it. But if you are someone who's doing a lot of things because of other people, you are stuck in your South Node. You are emotionally invested and connected to all the things that you're doing. And it becomes harder if people have placements, planets conjunct that South Node in the fourth house, or you're already a Cancer sun, rising moon, or something like that. And it's like, whoa, I'm so connected. I care so much about these people. I have to act in ways that help support what they want me to do. But your 10th house is about you defining what you want from the world. You're defining your image. And so so just like you have your image in your family, think about how you did that. How did you get that image, right? Is it because you were known for something in the family? Well, what do you want to be known for in the world? Is it because you are consistent in the family? And whether you're the jokester and you're always known for that, but in your career you want to be taken more seriously, are you someone that's always like, you're always there for someone? Are you the person who's very logical in your family? Whatever it is that you were, think about your fourth house energy, right? And if you're like, well, I don't know, this was just placed on me by other people, what I am in my family, I don't feel like I chose it. Well, then you go to your 10th house and you understand that there's going to be situations where you now need to think about what you want to choose. What is it that you want people to know you as? What do people respect about you? That's a very easy way to focus on or how we can impact the world. Look at your 10th house, look at your midheaven. What do people say about me? That's good, right? Let's take the good. How do I make that who I really become enough to then show people what I can do as well, right? If I'm really known for being consistent and thorough, I'm going to continue to do that. And then I'm going to add things to that so people see there's more to me. So you're working from your fourth house energy, and now how do you apply that to the world 10th house energy, 10th house goals, ambitions, and things of that nature. Now we're going to move to the 5th and the 11th. Okay, so the 5th and the 11th. Your 5th house, you were so invested in yourself, in the things you enjoyed, in the people that you enjoyed, that now you are here trying to figure out, how do I get more fulfillment though? That's not enough for you, right? And people are like, but the 5th house itself, and it's not just self, but it's joy. It's what we like about ourselves and what we, it's all the fun things. And, I have a whole list of 5th house, topics in the 5th house video. Sorry if I'm being vague, but I don't want to go into specifics, okay? That's already in a video. The point that I'm making here is the 5th house we become so attached to because it's joy. It's like, this is what I like. But if you have certain placements in that 5th house, especially conjunct that south node, if it's Mars, if it's Jupiter, let's say you have Leo there, let's say you have Aries there, let's say you have Capricorn there, let's say you have any placement there that can really make you a little too self-involved. So let's forget if you have 1st house placements and 5th house placements and your north node's in 11th house. You're actually here to learn how to become a part of a group. And that might not be easy at first. You may struggle because you're used to yourself. You're used to being seen, or you're used to it being all about you. You're used to doing things from your pleasure zone. That's the 5th house. But now you're also here, and you have to understand the 11th house brings a level of, it's Uranus, Saturn. It is about, there's a reputation aspect to 11th house. I wouldn't say it's like 10, but the 11th house can be that social network, or that's part of reputation, right? And Uranus is about, community. It is about society. It is about, breaking certain norms, things of that nature. Coming together with people who have similar viewpoints, shared ideals. So that means you have to work through, what is it that you're really, really good at? What do you really enjoy? But you got to find a group to belong to with that. Maybe you're bringing something to the group, but you're not hijacking the group. You're not taking the whole group over, even if you have Mars or Pluto there, and you're really there to lead. You have to learn how to lead in a way that makes people actually want to follow what you have to say. And so your 5th house, how are you going to work through that is, the 5th house is, this is what I enjoy, this is what I love, but then you start to feel too self-involved. And some people start to notice that right away. I want more meaningful things, I like doing this, but I want something more. Belong to something. You want to belong to a group, and it doesn't always have to mean you're going to seek out friends. It can mean you belong to an establishment. It can mean at work you belong to a certain group of people. Maybe you're the head of the union at work. Maybe you organize the parties at work, the holiday party, I don't know, right? The 11th house can mean you are in a bowling league. The 11th house can mean you're a part of a group that, gaming or, anime. Maybe you lead an anime convention in your town or city. I don't know, right? So I'm just saying, like, you're taking what you enjoy and love. And in this lifetime, it's about, I need to share that. I need to find a connection, okay, to people, to other people. All right, 6th house, 12th house. Okay, so if you're coming from a 6th house south node, your past was work. You had to work very hard. You had to work hard in ways that could have been very arduous. It could have been very, oppressive in some ways. You already are here feeling that way about work. You may be a person who naturally knows to spring into action to get things done, but you resent it. and you resent it because there is now this new opportunity on the horizon through your North Node, the 12th house. I tell people this, and I say this in a way that I hope doesn't come off as very like nonchalant. But if you have a North Node, if a 12th house North Node, for the most part, it wants you to relax. You did the hard work. You can be more imaginative. You can stop and smell the roses. You can stop rushing through life. You can pause and find things that are meaningful, that have nothing to do with checking off a task list. The 6th house is very checklisty. Okay, it's about efficiency, it's about improvement, it's about our health, it's about work. Okay, but you're the 12th house now. You know, it's an imaginative place. It's not a place. It can, you know, again, there's other dynamics of the 12th house. I've said this before in many of my videos. But if your North Node is there, you don't have the same mission as a person with it in the 2nd or 6th or 10th. You know, or the 8th even, where it can be a bit much trying to learn how to navigate that. The 12th, it's not easy. The 12th house can be very much, there's a lot of things. 12th house can be passive because you're so connected to the spiritual world that some people don't want to move as much in the earthly world. It can be passive. A person can be delusional if there's too much that they don't understand about. If the person decides not to act on what they really need to do in the world around them. The 12th house can be home to many things that can be difficult for people. Isolation. There's things to this. Okay, there's levels to this 12th house stuff. And I've talked about how I do not personally, as a 12th house stellium person, view the 12th house as doom and gloom. And I've explained why. But the point that I'm trying to make is I'm not going to minimize the 12th house can be difficult. But I'm saying when your North Node is there, you are here to learn spiritual lessons. And your spiritual lessons can't be timed. A person who has a North Node in the 6th house may have to do checklists. A person with North Node in the 6th house may have to learn how to practically stop and evaluate and look at their progress and measure their progress, because it's going to give them much more fulfillment. Whereas if your North Node's in the 12th house, you're learning how to accept things as they come. You're learning how to see the small things in life that can sometimes be that can be missed because we're in such a busy world. You're learning the true spiritual nature of things, okay? And so that becomes very, very much important for a person who has a North Node in the 12th house. Now, again, once you get into signs, degrees, aspects, planets, that's a very different territory. But that's just something to notice in the 7th house, okay? You have to master understanding your relationships. Your relationships with people are going to give you insight to who you are. With this person, I've acted like this. With this person, I've done these specific actions. What does that show me about me? So people with 7th house South nodes, it is very important before you even think through how to actualize your North Node. Are there any planets in your South Node, right? What do you still have to understand? Because if you don't understand your 7th house, then it's going to get messy. It's going to get mingled. You're not going to really feel fully fulfilled with your North Node because you have not fully understood yourself within these partnerships. And when we enter unions with people, we are entering an emotional and energetic contract, okay? You can even maybe call it a spiritual contract if you want to look at it that way. When we enter unions with people, or, oh, that's my best friend, oh, that's my business partner, oh, that's my husband and wife, whatever 7th house themes you're going through, you are interacting with that person's energy. And a person's energy can throw yours off. And maybe the synastry just isn't right. And maybe, though, through that relationship, you learn something new about yourself that now helps empower you, right? I didn't know I could stand up for myself until I was in that relationship. I didn't know that I could give and receive in a relationship until I was in that one, right? And now, because I have had positive interactions with other people, I now built my confidence up, and now I feel more fulfilled and more centered to move toward my North Node purpose, okay? So I would say really look at it from that perspective, okay? It is going to be before that North Node, that 1st house, you're like, oh, that's for some people that is rather intimidating, especially if you have planets in the South Node in the 7th house, where you're like, whoa, wait, the 1st house, self, I got to be by myself, I got to do something on my own. But it's like you have to first, deal with any of the baggage that you have with relationships and people and understanding them and your role within those partnerships. in order to gain insight to what you need to do alone. You might be like, you know what? I loved working with this person, but this is really what I liked doing. So let me do this, right? Especially if we're talking like a work relationship. You partnered with somebody, it really wasn't your thing. Like part of the work you did, you didn't like, but you know now, oh, actually, I like this part of it. You know, maybe you're like, oh yeah, me and my friend, we had a business for a couple of years. It was a restaurant / bar, but I really think I want a small cafe, right? I'm going to go out on my own. So maybe the person has North Node in Capricorn in the first house, and Saturn is also in Capricorn or something like that in the first house, right? So it's like, that is an example of like learning from your relationships with people, and from that relationship, taking what is uniquely you and allowing for that part of you to grow outside of that particular union will assist in that area. Okay, so now we're working with, you have an 8th house South Node. Well, you might, especially if you have planets there, let's say you have Jupiter or Venus conjunct that South Node, you might be in situations where you're coming into this world and you've already had experiences with people gifting or giving you things, okay? Like you're given certain things. Remember, the 8th house can be assets. It's joint assets, but the 8th house can also, remember Mars, Pluto, it can be where you gain power and from the things around you. And so with the South Node in the 8th house, everything in that past life was very deep and there was a lot of attachments. What you learn from your 8th house though is, of all of these things that I have, right, what is the most important, right? That'll help you find more guidance and more consistency with your second house North Node. Where your second house North Node, you're learning the value of your own money. So at first, through the 8th house, if you're getting a lot or you're receiving investments from people and you're receiving things, it is important to always evaluate what from that do you think is going to really help you become better on your own. So what can happen is, you can have an 8th house person with all those beautiful planets that can sometimes mean gifts, okay? You have Jupiter, you have Venus there, a Sun may be there, you have a stellium in the 8th house, conjunct your South Node or something like that, and you've been spoiled your whole life or given things your whole life, and you haven't, and there are other placements that would suggest that, but let's just talk about that with the 8th house, right? So let's say and the 8th house always has a little element of control. So just because someone's giving you something, it doesn't mean it's always free. It can mean that, someone holds you, is that the right term, by the purse strings, or somebody is manipulating through money, or because they gave you money, they assume, oh, I gave you that, so you're going to do this with it. You understand what I'm saying? So that is why you have this North Node in the second house, where you're going to set out on your own. So you could be a person that eventually gets tired of that. But the importance here with the 8th house is going to be using what you get to sustain yourself. It would be a shame to get things or have certain opportunities and then not see of this, because the money train might not last forever, right? Getting things or obtaining things from people, and some people, depending on placements, let's say they have the 8th house, they have Pluto, and maybe like Pluto, Mercury is squaring Pluto in the chart and things like that. You could have a person that gets money through dishonest ways. A person who is, especially if they have some 5th house energy as well, like they gamble a little too much with their luck in terms of money and literally gambling, scheming, scamming, something like that. Again, the whole chart would need to be taken into consideration. But let's say you have a situation like that. You are not supposed to keep scheming and scamming. You should not be scamming anyway. But you're supposed to sustain yourself through the second house. So no matter how you get what you get through the 8th house, you're supposed to take something and build up your own so that you're not constantly seeking from other people, okay? Or looking for other people, or looking for something to be more than what you need. Your North Node in the second house tells you to focus on your needs and not just the things you want to control. And so that is where you want to start with that 8th house, is examining all the things that you have. How did you get it? How can you, instead of just taking something, how do you build onto it, right? If you receive something, how do you take it take and make opportunities for you to fully sustain yourself? So that way you do feel a little bit more self-made instead of gaining, getting, or having the plot to get things. It now becomes a little bit more natural and in tune with your nature. Now, if we want to talk about the 3rd and the 9th house, if you're starting from your 9th house North Node, you really want to think through what you believe. You're already coming into this world having a very opinionated type of mindset. So since you already are very opinionated, that means you form certain ideas very quickly, okay? And this is a remnant from maybe a past where there was a heavy emphasis on having to believe certain things or having to weigh certain decisions, things of that nature. And so your South Node represents this need to constantly be able to find ways to spread or share or in some way enhance your the beliefs of others through you somehow channeling ideas and opportunities to share with them what you think, what you believe, what you think is right, what you think is wrong. But your North Node requires you to be focused more on how to think, how to ask questions, how to be a little bit more removed from stimulation in terms of needing to constantly be right, needing to constantly focus on your energy on what you've already established. The third house is also more local than the ninth house, so you're having a North Node in the third house. It may mean you're a person that's like, yeah, you could, if you're still connected to your South Node, maybe your South Node's conjunct Jupiter or Mars or something like that, and you're someone that's moved around a lot, roamed around a lot, maybe you have some fourth house energy showing you moved around a lot, but eventually when you have North Node in the third house, you want to stay somewhere local, or this is the person that roams a lot just to return back to where they're comfortable, where they're familiar, okay? And so the importance of your third house is you're making more of an impact in a more familiar environment as opposed to having to be, part of something bigger. The ninth house can be those public platforms. It can be public speaking, engagements. I talked about that through my last video where I talked about places in the houses. But also, remember, the third house speaking engagements could be more something that is like meetings. The third house would be more of those types of things where if you're talking about mass crowd or something like that, that is ninth house. If you're talking like a radio show, if you're talking about an interview, that would be more third house, okay? So your North Node is, in order for you to really capitalize North Node, yes, you might feel like you have to, first in life, you're very much into your own opinions, but you could have experiences where you start to learn that that is not all that there is, or you start to have negative experiences jumping to conclusions too much. Or you recognize the importance of slowing down, understanding first, learning before. Now, again, you might have to dibble dabble. You might have to go back and forth, right? Because your ninth house energy, if you have especially planets there, you might sometimes have to be vocal or the voice of something. But you also have to learn first. It's not just about coming out and saying, like, this is what I believe and this is how I'm going to live my life solely like this. Your third house North Node is going to be important in terms of you learning how to make better decisions that are based off facts and not just what you think or believe to be true. Okay, so you're starting here, of course, from that South Node, understanding what you believe and then questioning it. It doesn't mean you're abandoning your South Node. I think there's this misconception that, South Node is bad, I got to get rid of it. You're never going to get rid of your South Node because that is a place we sometimes return to when we need to. Sometimes we have to operate from that South Node. Now, operating from the South Node feels familiar. It feels easier. But the North Node is going to give you a more sense of satisfaction, okay? But it's not that it's wrong. So from your ninth house, think through everything that you believe that you experienced, but then remember that you need to research it as well, right? It's like being born into a family that's very religious and then realizing with your North Node third house, but I got to question things. I need to, research. I need to really do some digging about this before I really commit to believing what other people want me to believe. Now, if we're dealing with the fourth and a 10th house situation, the South Node is starting from the 10th house. So you are coming from an experience where your life was somehow revolved around what you could achieve, what you could earn, status. You had to keep a status symbol. So it could mean that, you have 10th house energy, there's a certain, regalness to it. But at the same time, we have to be careful because the 10th house can get really caught up with this respect aspect, right? It can get really caught up with being seen by the world, being respected by the world. And of course, there's nothing wrong with respect, okay? Respect is definitely something that we want to, all of us kind of want in our life, we want, right? In multiple ways, we want respect. We want people to see our worth, okay? But what's happening here is your North Node is now in the fourth house where some of your goals in this lifetime or some of the mission that you're really here is to understand how to connect to people. You're not just connected to your achievements or monetary rewards, you're learning how to connect to others. But first what happens is through your 10th house, where you are learning how to fully, let go of some of the pressure. You might be a person where you have all this 10th house energy, or maybe you have planets in the 10th house or aspects, to a planet in the 10th house, and you've been successful, but you're like, that's not enough. That's because your North Node's in the 4th house, and you're here to make connections to family-like situations. And I say situations because some people may say, look, I'm not, the person might say, you know what, I'm not going to have a family. But you are here in some way to have connections to people. Maybe you meet people who feel like family. Maybe you say, you know what, I moved away from the city, and now I live in this community of people, and I'm happy here, and we take care of one another. That would be very 4th house in nature. Be 11th house as well, but that would be very 4th house in nature, because yes, it's great to be accomplished, to have achievements, and maybe your chart shows that you are driven, that you are supposed to also achieve things, but your South Node already went through that experience of being seen, being noticed, being recognized. And so for you now, it comes into this place where it's not enough. And so that is where you want to be very careful. A lot of times people feel like life, there's not enough. Something's not enough. That is why the North Node is so important, because it helps you understand where to now direct that energy. Okay, I'm successful in terms of my life. I've achieved this. Now let me focus on what really matters. What really matters more emotionally, okay? And understanding that the goals of the 4th house may not always be seen. Right? What you do with your family, what you do with your loved ones, how you really feel about things, how you really need to be nurtured, that is not always seen by the world around you. So you have to get used to not always having goals that are in the aim of being seen and recognized, right? Now, if someone's like, wait, my son's in the South Node, that's a reading, right? When we get very specific about things, like, wait a minute, I have contradictions in my chart. That is why I tell people chart readings are very important, because everyone's chart is going to have contradictions. And so it becomes very important for you to understand how to read that or get that analyzed for you. So, think about that. 10th house, you have what it takes, or you feel that compelling pressure, but understanding that it is going to be enough for you to do this in ways that help you connect. The other thing I would say, though, yes, there could be, again, a lot of people start from their South Node. There's nothing wrong with that. Meaning you might be a person where, like, you do a lot of work to be seen and recognized early in life because that's all you know. And then as you get older, you start to understand that emotional side of you that also needs to be fulfilled, right? And so there are ways in which there's nothing wrong with starting out from your South Node. That energy is what you know, it's what's comfortable, but then moving backward and understanding that now the goals are a little bit different than what they would be in the past. We're dealing with the 5th and the 11th house. We're going to start from the 11th house. Okay, so the 11th house South Node, you feel always that you're connected to a group or wanting to. So you can sometimes have people who don't feel that social, but always have that longing to belong to a club, an organization, a group, a social network, or something of that nature. If you have a South Node and there's planets there, you may feel a heavy emphasis on your community or on the people that you're around. And that's important, because from those people, you might learn the things that you're really good at. Which leads us to your 5th house. Remember, the 5th house is personal. It's going to be the things that you're good at. And it's going to be the things that bring you the most joy. And again, I'm not going to go into detail about what the 5th house means. There's a video for that. So if any of these house descriptions feels vague to you, I have a list of the houses where I go into more depth of what each house represents, okay? But if we look here, remember your 11th house, there you're going to start from here. You're going to start from being around people, checking out society, checking things out on social media. You're going to start by going out to places where you see different people, or you're going to start with just needing to see what's available, what's around you. What does this person think? What does that person think? Let me, before you find your 5th house energy is fully capable, which is about, now it's your turn. It's my turn. Okay, yeah, I hung out with those people and I really like this. So now I'm going to take it to the 5th house and really hone my skill, hone my craft, be really good at it. It's kind of like hanging out with a bunch of people and you all have the same hobby or interest because it's cool at the time, but you're like, whoa, this is something I want to take to my 5th house because I really want to focus on this. Maybe you're a North Node in Cancer and you're like, I want to work on a project with this. I don't need the group's approval all the time. I'm going to the 5th house. I'm going to where I feel confident. So again, South Node, 11th house South Node, you are likely starting with stimulation from things outside of yourself because that's what you're used to. And it also does help you fine tune your interests, right? It helps you delineate something that is a little bit more specific to the things that you enjoy doing. Okay, so don't be surprised if, like, it's okay. You and your friends, or you were in an organization and then it fell off, but you're still holding tight, doing something that you enjoy. That's fine. That's what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Finding things among society, among groups, and really understanding. It's not about they have to inspire you, but it's like, from that, what is it that you enjoy? Why are you there? Because that's really going to help you connect to your 5th house North Node, where you're no longer contingent just on what the group wants, what is seen as a connection to other people, and now becomes more about what you personally want. All right. So if you have a South Node, a 12th house South Node, you are likely coming from a past where you had to do a lot of things behind the scenes. You had to do a lot of things behind the scenes. You had to maybe have a lot of trust. You had to have a lot of faith. Maybe there's some religious components or spiritual components to this, where you had to believe a lot. You had to be compassionate. You had to work with the emotions. Okay. And this can get tricky if you're like, wait a minute, but what if my North Node is in the 6th house in Cancer or Pisces or Scorpio? Again, that there are some nuances to this, and that would, chart readings help with that. But in general, if we're looking at the South Node being the 12th house, you're coming from a past of maybe even being isolated. You're coming from a past of where maybe you felt hidden. You didn't feel that you didn't have a lot of choice in the way your daily life looked. There could have been a disassociation from achieving certain goals or physical goals outside of the world around you. And that's why you now have your North Node in the 6th house. So what happens here is 12th house 6th South Node, there's a belief, there's an imaginative quality to you. There's likely this very, I wouldn't say childlike, but it's this childlike view of like, this is going to happen. It's fine. This is going to happen, and that's not wrong. Like, but if it was a North Node in 12th house, that would be different. The South Node is telling us that's the past. You now need to focus on the North. So what we're looking at here, the way I describe your South Node and North Node is going to be dependent on which one it is. Okay. So because of that, you're now into this realm where you need to focus on how to bring things out into the open. 6th house is open. You see it. It's there. It's in front of you. It's work. It is effort. It is not belief. Okay, 6th house is not waiting on belief. It's not waiting on spiritualism. It's not waiting on something, right? Your South Node, you might have had to hold on to your faith for your belief. And maybe that was your role within a certain world or a certain society or community. That you were the person that, maybe you gave people hope. You gave people inspiration. Okay, maybe you gave more inspiration to other people than you had yourself. And now 6th house North Node, you're here to make it happen for yourself. But as I say, the 6th house is important. It is a house that's often overlooked. It's not tantalizing. It's not, it's not this dramatic, transformative, beautiful partnership. It's not those houses. However, the 6th house, I say a lot of times, the 6th house is where we fine tune things. We get stuff done. We check ourselves. Health is the 6th house. 6th house is like the product production. Before you send something off, we got to make sure everything's right in the right place, or else everything can fall apart. So the importance here with your North Node is you're now here to produce something. So all that imagination that you may feel, and now it's like, take it. What do you now do with it? You know what I mean? Like, what do you now do in the physical world to work on those things that you are feeling compelled to do? I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do that. Well, guess what? Maybe in your past life that worked out for you because your belief in faith was enough. But now, guess what? Your North Node's in the 6th house. And let's say you have some earth energy a lot in that chart. You're here to work. And you can make it work for you, but you're here to see results. You're here to do things that actually we can see. You're here to do things that actually can be improved and set into rotation, set in motion. Okay, so North Node 6th house, you gotta work. You gotta work hard. You gotta be specific. You gotta be, you gotta look at that, 6th house is Virgo energy, even if Virgo's not in that 6th house in your chart. But your North Node requires you to think about things in ways that support a better sense of understanding and how to get things done. You can't just wish upon a star. There's more that you need to do.